Good evening, everyone. When it was evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Summon the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and ending with the first." When those who had started about 5 o'clock came, each received the usual daily wage. So when the first came, they thought that they would receive more, but each of them also got the usual wage. Matthew 20, verses 8 to 10. Is life always fair? It would seem not. We have all experienced situations in life when we felt as though we were cheated. Children are usually sensitive to this and will often complain to a parent when they feel as though they have been treated unjustly. From an earthly perspective, it is true that life is not always fair. But we ought not live by an earthly perspective. We are called to live according to the divine perspective. From that perspective, everything is fair in the end, and true justice is meted out to everyone. When we consider the question of whether or not life is fair, we should always begin with the Son of God. Jesus was certainly not treated fairly. In fact, it is hard to conclude that anyone who has ever lived received a more unjust treatment than Jesus, at least from an earthly perspective. He was perfect in every way. He treated everyone throughout his life with perfect virtue. He never lied, cheated, stole, etc. Yet we all know what happened to him. He was falsely accused, dishonestly judged, brutally abused, and murdered on a cross. From an earthly perspective, it is clear that this was not fair. Jesus' life, along with ours, must not be evaluated from the perspective of earthly justice. It's not that treating others unjustly is permissible by the will of God. Each of us has a moral responsibility to act in justice as a minimum requirement. But we are also called to exceed earthly justice and live by the new standard of supernatural grace. From that perspective, Jesus' suffering and death was not tragic. It was glorious. His cross was not an instrument of injustice. It was his throne upon which he established his new kingdom. Once grace enters the picture, all apparent injustice is turned upside down and must be looked at from a different perspective. The parable we read today presents to us the scenario in which God has chosen to bestow His grace and mercy in abundance to all who turn to Him. We can never earn the right to His mercy. Nothing we can do will ever give us the right to the gift of eternal salvation. Therefore, this parable especially challenges us to look at heaven and the life of grace on earth from the perspective of gift. All is a gift from God. Whether we convert at the end of our lives after living sinful lives, or whether we have spent our whole lives serving the will of God, all is a gift in the end. All is grace. Reflect today upon how deeply you desire to see those who have not yet given their lives to God to come to Him and receive the fullness of grace. Look at them within the context of this parable. Examine how you feel about those laborers who have not yet begun their service of God. Examine also how your feelings towards those who seem undeserving of the fullness of God's grace. If you find that you have jealousy or judge others from the perspective of earthly justice, work to eliminate that perspective so that your heart's deepest desire is to see God bestow the fullness of mercy upon everyone in this world when they turn to Him with a contrite heart. And God bless you.
God's generosity and God's magnanimity. We are now on the 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time, brothers and sisters. And our gospel for this Sunday, the parable of the workers working in the vineyard. A very, very good example on how the Lord is so gracious, generous, magnanimous in His love, in His compassion, in His attention, and especially in His call to all of us. It is then, brothers and sisters, that the landowner has asked people to work in His vineyard in a very concrete, specific, different times of the day. Justice and fairness would tell us that you'll be receiving different kind of wages according to what day or what number of hours they have been working in the vineyard. But nonetheless, the landowner has told them before the work that they will be receiving a single day wage each, regardless of the number of hours they have been working in the vineyard. Now, the key of the parable then is the statement that the last will be the first and the first will be the last. In the kingdom of heaven, justice and fairness do not follow worldly values. In the kingdom of heaven, everything is done by grace and not by merit. The righteousness we have developed in the world will not bind God in the kingdom of heaven. We learn from the gospel today that God does not call everybody at the same time. Truly, then, the Lord has called us in a very concrete, specific, peculiar times of our lives. But regardless of when we are called by the Lord, it is Him to give us, to shower us His abundant grace, compassion, and mercy. God gives to those that He pleases in the amount that He chooses. He is free to do what He wants with what belongs to Him, namely His grace. The Lord is just and fair in all His dealings, and no one will ever go unrewarded for His works that are accredited to Him. There is an important lesson here about God's justice. When sin from our often mathematical and narrow-minded viewpoint, it often looks like injustice. We tend to think that if a person can do more, is better. If a person then should have a greater reward, so to speak. Why, for instance, is there such as a disparity between the income of a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, and a bus driver? Which of these, in fact, really does more work? We are not sure. Yet they do not receive uniform reward. We even think that if we do more for God, will somehow love us more and reward us more. That is very much for the background of this parable. So, brothers and sisters, in the grace and by the grace of the Lord, we are all being invited in His kingdom, in His vineyard, regardless of the times in our lives that we respond there, that the Lord will be so magnanimous, will so be generous to all of us. It is worth reflecting, brothers and sisters, that the landowner did not compare those people who have been working in his vineyard. To each, he has given them their wages. This is also then the challenge for all of us. When the Lord invites us, when the Lord entrusts us for a specific purpose, for a specific vocation, there's no room for comparison. To each its own, according to its own talent, according to the mode of how the person could possibly respond, with all generosity, with all openness, and with all their heart and mind and soul to the Lord. It's a very, very important aspect that we have to always consider, brothers and sisters. The call of the Lord is always a call of fidelity, a call of commitment, and a call of dedication. It is only Him that will give us a kind of reward, not because we have been working earlier, not because we are that Lord, but precisely because God is so generous. God is so loving. God is so kind. And God is so compassionate. The challenge of the Lord to all of us, brothers and sisters, is to follow Him more closely, more dearly, and more intimately. There's no reason for us to compare ourselves with others. There's no reason for us to be envious on the gifts of another person. But it's always a clarion call for us to respond with utmost fidelity, with utmost enthusiasm, with utmost dedication on God's calling for all of us. So friends, as we try to reflect this very, very beautiful Gospel on the 25th Sunday in ordinary time, let us remember the time that you have been called by the Lord. You might be called at an early stage of our lives, or may be called in the mid time of our lives, or towards the end of being a person. But what matters most is the Lord calls us for a purpose. The Lord calls us for a reason. And the Lord asks us to respond. Definitely, He is so magnanimous. Definitely, He is so good. And definitely, the Lord is so generous for all of us. A pleasant evening, brothers and sisters.